Okay, and now we're going to do cast shadows. So first we have to mix up a darkest gray. We don't need the little brushes anymore. So we're going to start by adding some water. Doesn't matter how, well, if it's extremely dirty you want new water, but if it's a little dirty it's fine. You're mixing a really dark color, so that won't matter. And we're going to do phthalo blue this time because it's stronger than the ultramarine, and red and yellow. So I'm going to use the brilliant red this time because it's closer to orange than the other one, and we want blue and orange as a mix. And then the yellow I'm just going to need more of, so I'm going to squeeze out some more. So again, starting with the weaker color, add lots of yellow. So we're making a really dark color, really saturated, so we pretty much want a lot of everything. And I can already tell, once again, I have too much because we don't need a lot. And actually, oh, you know what? I just had an idea. Rather than mix a new color, we already have a really saturated dark red here. So let's just add some green to it, and that'll make dark gray. This is how you can utilize colors you've already mixed. You don't have to start from scratch every single time, as long as we know we don't need the red anymore and I'm done with it. If you're not done with it, then don't do this. And rather than squeeze out more green and waste the red, yellow, and blue I've just squeezed out, I'm going to add yellow and blue because yellow and blue make green. And that will make a really dark gray. So it looks like I've made a really dark bluish gray. Let's check it out. Yeah, that's really blue. Yeah, so we need some orange. We'll just add the rest of the yellow. Probably not nearly enough, but we'll see. And then, fortunately, I squeezed out the reddish orange color instead of the reddish purple, so I'll add some of that, and maybe that'll be what we need, but I expect we'll need more yellow anyway. We'll find out. So, scrape. Now I am going to press a little harder when I test because I want to be able to see the paper through it, because it'll help me to decipher the color. When a color is so dark that you can't see through it, oh sorry, that's a bad example, it just looks black. So now I can see that it's kind of a purpley gray. Yeah, so it's purple, which means I need more yellow. Yeah, there's not enough there, so I'm going to add some more. Purple and yellow are opposites on the color wheel, so that's how I know what to add. That will neutralize purple into gray. Mix that in real good. Scrape and test. Aha, neutral gray. Alright, so I've got a really dark gray. Let me re-stir my light and test it and see how the two look together, because I want to make sure they match reasonably well. Yeah, they do. My dark gray is actually probably a little too dark, but that's okay. It'll work itself out in the painting. It'll bleed into the light color and that'll be fine. So you'll see I've turned my painting upside down because I'm right-handed. We're going to be painting entirely on the right side, and I want to be pointing my brush towards those right edges to blend them. So it's really impractical to do that all from the left. So I'm going to start with the light color. We're going to start at the top so that I'm not dragging my fist through. If I did the bottom one, I'd have to carefully be working over it. So we'll start at the top one. Make sure your shells are all completely dry. If that means blow drying it or waiting an hour or whatever, if you're in a really hot day, just make sure they're really dry, and you can do that by touching them with the back of your hand. Don't use your front because you might leave fingerprints. If your fingers are dirty, or if it happens to be a little bit wet, sometimes you can leave fingerprints, so just always use the back of your hand. So what we're going to do is paint the shape of the shadow. I don't recommend drawing it in first because, first of all, it's an imperfect shape, so it doesn't really matter if it's exactly the same size as in the reference, or shape even. And secondly, you don't want to have to adhere to a pencil line. It tends to make it look a little too cartoony. So just eyeball it. It's real fun. So you're going to start with the tip of your brush right at the very edge of your shell and make it as thin as you can, and then very quickly it'll get wider, so just pull the edge out to the right. I'm going to reload my brush and drop some color in now because I started off with not very much paint on my brush, and now I want to darken it. So now I'm just going to kind of paint it in approximately the shape I see, but being very careful to try to get right next to the edge but not inside the shell at all. And then end up right at the tip there, very thin, and then pull out to the right. So I'm going to quickly rinse, touch my towel, grab a little bit of the dark, and just drop that in up here at the top and let it bleed into the light. And at the bottom, actually, sorry, I should have done the bottom first since it doesn't really matter, but if one is drier than the other, you want to do that first so that they bleed at the same rate. Then rinse, touch. Mine is blending really nicely, but if yours isn't, you can dab the edge a little bit to encourage them to blend together. And then once you're happy with that, rinse, touch a little bit, but you want to have some water in your brush, so touch your towel, not a whole lot, and then just pointing your brush toward the edge, go back and wipe around the edge. Really laying the brush down so that you get a nice wide blend. And just kind of allow it to do what it's going to do. You can see that mine is forming an edge over here, so I'm going to go back, and now I don't have any water in my brush. I touch the towel to get all of it out and wipe it off. And the reason I don't have any water in my brush is because I don't want to encourage it to bleed anymore. The first time I did because I want a really soft edge. Second time I don't. And for whatever reason, remember how my color was separating? Now it's separating again, and it's creating a really beautiful effect. So I'm going to leave that and go on to the next one. If you want to noodle yours anymore, you can. You can wipe the edges. You can add a little bit more dark if it feels that way. I've got a little bit of a blunt edge right there, so I'm just going to dab at it a little bit, encourage it to go a tiny bit further. If you accidentally got some in your shell, that's fine. Don't try to wipe it off now because it'll just encourage the shadow to continue bleeding into the shell. Wait till it's completely dry, and then I'll show you how to go back and get that out. So now we'll go on to the next one, and we've already done this, so you're just going to do it again. Start very thin, and then reload your brush, get some more paint on it. Try not to go into the shell, and this one ends up a little bit below the tip of the shell, about right there. And then I'm going to fill in the rest, just kind of haphazardly. Rinse, touch, get my dark. Drop that in on the bottom since I started at the bottom. Let it bleed. The wetter your color is, the easier this will bleed into it. And it may be wetter in certain areas and not in others. Rinse, touch, and mine isn't bleeding as well as that one did, so I'm just going to dab at it a little bit. And then I've got this weird light spot here, which I'm going to just go back and blend. Now rinse, touch a little bit so you have some water left in the brush, and really lay the brush down and just wipe all the way around the outer edge, pointing the brush towards the edge the entire time. And then you can rinse, touch, and go back and adjust anything you need to. But, do try to allow the watercolor to do its thing, because look at all this cool texture it's creating. And I'm not even trying, it's just doing it by itself. I am getting another edge down here that I don't like, so I'm going to go back and wipe that. Seems that part of my shadow is stubborn. But that's alright. And now I'm going to do my third one. So, stir up my gray again. And paint it in, starting very pointy part on the bottom edge of the shell. and then go along the inside edge up to the top and kind of pull it out into a round shape. Add more color so that it's really wet, because my painted that one kind of dry. Rinse, touch very well, get my dark, and paint that into the top edge, dab it into the bottom edge. Rinse, touch, and then help this blend a little bit more smoothly. Rinse again, touch a little bit so I have some water left in the brush, pointing towards the edge, wipe around the outside to let it bleed. And go back and adjust anything that's rubbing you the wrong way. Got an edge there, I'm going to wipe that up. And I feel like I need a little more dark down here. But now I've blended this, so the dark may go all the way to my blended edge, which means I'm going to have to kind of force it back. Rinse, touch, and go back and blend a little bit inside. Rinse, touch, and wipe. Alright, so I think we're good there. Now we'll just blow dry it or let it air dry and come back and do some finishing touches.